They wrote, not just with ink, but with blood, sweat, rebellion, and dreams. From the ink-stained hands of Puritans to the typewriters of Harlem poets, American literature carved the nation's soul. Every word told a story. Every poem echoed pain, love, or protest. And behind each book was a revolution. A cry for freedom, a plea for justice, a whisper of lost love. This isn't just literature. This is America screaming on paper. In the quiet stillness of a candlelit room in 17th century, a Puritan clergyman dipped his quill into a well of ink, unaware that his sermons and journals would lay the fragile foundation for something that would outlast wars, empires, and presidents' American literature. And from that humble beginning, words grew into weapons, dreams, and revolutions. Welcome to Timeless America, the place where stories shape nations. Before we dive into this soul-stirring journey of American words, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, so you never miss the hidden tales behind America's most defining moments. It all began with the Puritans. Their writing was steeped in religious devotion, fear of sin, and a desperate need to survive in a wild, unknown land. They weren't writing novels or poetry for entertainment. They were documenting life as a spiritual test. Men like Jonathan Edwards wrote fire and brimstone sermons like Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, not to entertain but to awaken sinners. But even in these strict, fearsome words, the roots of American storytelling were being born: truth, rawness, unflinching emotion. Then came the Revolutionary Era. The quills were sharper, the words louder. Thomas Paine's common sense didn't just spark debate, it ignited a revolution. And while politicians held muskets, writers wielded pamphlets. They stirred rebellion with paragraphs. They bled their beliefs onto pages. Writers like Jefferson and Franklin didn't just create political systems, they wrote them into being. This was the age when American literature became a tool of war, a declaration of identity, and a refusal to be silenced. And then came the fire of Romanticism in the early 19th century, when America looked inward. The wild landscapes of the New World inspired new myths. Washington Irving gave us the legend of Sleepy Hollow, and James Fenimore Cooper painted the American frontier through The Last of the Mohicans. But it was Edgar Allan Poe who made the darkness sing. He whispered of ravens, madness, and mystery. Every sentence he wrote was a descent into the unknown, like America itself, experimenting with new identity and form. The mid-1800s were the most defiant years in American literary history. This was the era of transcendentalists, rebels who believed in the power of the individual, the sanctity of nature, and the danger of conformity. Ralph Waldo Emerson challenged Americans to think differently. Henry David Thoreau retreated to Walden Pond and emerged with a philosophy that would later inspire Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Jr. Their pens were peaceful, but their ideas were radical. And then, like thunder crashing down, came slavery. American literature stared into its darkest mirror. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin was not just a novel, it was a cry. Abraham Lincoln would later meet her and say, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." Meanwhile, African-American voices like Frederick Douglass shattered every lie about slavery with truth and fire. His autobiography didn't just tell his life, it tore down centuries of myth with the brutal honesty of survival. As America healed and bled through the Civil War and beyond, writers like Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson showed that poetry could be both expansive and intimate. Whitman's Leaves of Grass celebrated the body, the soul, and the American experience in language that throbbed with life. Dickinson, writing from the solitude of her home in Amherst, Massachusetts, revealed the inner universe of a woman far ahead of her time. Her poems bent grammar and punctuation to her will. She didn't follow rules, she rewrote them. The 20th century came crashing in like jazz. It was loud, fast, and thrilling. The Lost Generation Hemingway. Fitzgerald Stein wrote, "In the ashes of World War I, they drank, traveled, and scribbled brilliance onto hotel napkins." Fitzgerald gave us The Great Gatsby, the tragic American dream told through green lights and champagne. Hemingway wrote with icebergs. In Min Dunley, a fraction of his meaning was visible, while the rest sank deep. And then came the Harlem Renaissance, a movement, not just of literature, but of liberation. Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Claude McCarthy turned pain into rhythm, racism into resistance, oppression into art. They didn't just write Black America into existence, they sang it into being. Harlem wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a literary revolution. The Great Depression gave rise to writers like John Steinbeck, who captured the American struggle with unflinching realism. The Grapes of Wrath was a portrait of suffering, but also of hope, of unity, a family clinging together on the road west. American literature during this time became the voice of the voiceless. World War II brought new complexities. Writers like Norman Mailer, Kurt Vonnegut, and Joseph Heller introduced satire, absurdity, and darkness into narratives about war and bureaucracy. They challenged readers to question authority, meaning, and even existence itself. Then came the Beat Generation. Jack Kerouac hit the road. Allen Ginsberg howled. They weren't just rejecting traditional literature, they were rejecting traditional life. They worshipped spontaneity, raw experience, and freedom of expression. Their words danced, screamed, and wandered. In the 1960s and 70s, American literature became political again. Writers like Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, and Maya Angelou revealed the deep wounds of racism, identity, and inequality. Beloved, the fire next time. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings These weren't just books. They were battle cries, explorations of trauma and strength, identity and love. Their words still ripple through classrooms and hearts today. Fast forward to the 21st century. American literature is now global, digital, and diverse. Writers like Jhumpa Lahiri, Viet Thanh Nguyen, Colson, Whitehead, and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie have expanded the American story to include immigrants, refugees, exiles, and wanderers. The literary map of America now includes voices that were once silenced or excluded. And here's where the Gold Card story becomes part of this narrative. In 2025, when the U.S. launched the Gold Card program, a new visa path for skilled immigrants, many of those eligible were writers, thinkers, and artists. These immigrants brought not just skills, but stories. Their words became new branches in the American literary tree, proving that literature, like America, is an ever-evolving mosaic. From Puritans to poets, rebels to reformers, American literature has always been more than ink on a page. It is protest, it is passion. It is the record of a people struggling to define themselves across centuries of change. Each writer, each book, each voice adds a new verse to this grand American symphony. So, the next time you open a novel, a poem, or even a single sentence written in the heart of this nation, remember, you are not just reading words, you are reading America itself. If you enjoyed this powerful journey through the soul of American literature, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell icon to stay connected with timeless America. Because behind every word, there's a world worth exploring.